Kalos is full of mysteries that connected across the world of Pokemon, whether it be the hidden origins of the mythical Volcanion, the kingdoms that Malamar and Aegislash used to change history that resulted in another war within Kalos, the haunting story of Route 14's faceless men, the Hex Maniac Ghost Girl, connections to other lands such as the Flood of Floette and the Tree of Life within the Area Zero Underdepths of Paldea, and then there's even the hidden battle between AZ and Zygarde over the lives of Xerneas and Yveltal when he used them for the ultimate weapon. After investigating every nook and cranny to find every unsolved mystery and some of their potential answers, I now bring to you the many mysteries of Kalos that Legends ZA needs to solve. Howdy there, I'm Krillic, and we are on the cusp of the release of Legends ZA, and as such, I wanted to bring to you every single possible mystery that Kalos left us with, and everything that Legends ZA just might be able to solve. We're going beyond just speculation, such as figuring out Corbo's potential family relations or what mega Pokemon anyone might have. I want to talk about solving Hex Maniac mysteries, the ghosts of Kalos, if Mega Evolution hurts Pokemon, and nearly a total of 50 different mysteries. We'll dive through this as though it were an iceberg, created by yours truly, with each major section having what I believe are deeper and deeper mysteries and theories. As we go through, I'll give you as much info as possible and give you what I believe may be the answers to these mysteries, if there are any answers. And so let's begin in the surface level mysteries. These are going to be mysteries that most people are aware of, or I think are fairly short and simple, specifically with "You're Not the One," the classic Ghost Girl and Hex Maniac combo mystery. It serves as one of the many different ghost stories within Kalos, let alone the world of Pokemon, where the Hex Maniac simply looks at us after we exit the elevator and states, "No, you're not the one," before floating away. This same individual appears within a graveyard within Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, saying the same phrase before walking away from us at Mount Pyre. This place being known for having stronger spiritual energy. A concept I have talked about excessively on this channel is the connection that spirits have with mountains and even space itself. Long story short, the closer you are to the sky or space, the closer you are to heaven, resulting in the veil between living and dead becoming thinner or even non-existent in a number of different cultures in real life. Mount Pyre is one of these locations, so is Mount Lanakila in Alola, and we know this is fact thanks to our Elite Four member within Hoenn, Phoebe, who not only comes up to Mount Pyre for her grandmother, but also because she has a strong connection with spirits. There's a whole thing going on there that I've talked about in other videos, but continuing forward, even within her room, she teases us about a ghost being here, and while she plays it off as a joke, there is absolutely a ghost we can see if we just adjust our brightness. Now, regarding this whole "You're Not the One" mystery here, now that we've set our basis, there are tons of theories as to what this could mean, and people have even tried connecting it to many of our other mysteries that we'll talk about later, but it may be far simpler than we ever expected. I have to give credit to an individual known as Mao Science, who pointed out cultural details that I was missing. One of these details being that the encounter within Kalos occurs on the 4th floor. The number 4 is associated with bad luck or even death within Japanese culture. My first interaction with this would actually be with Mista within JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. His own fear of the number 4 means that despite having what are essentially 6 living rounds, the total number only goes all the way up to 7 and skips 4 entirely, while he also has a deep phobia of the number 4. Nevertheless, there's another detail here where there is an individual within the same building, back in Pokemon, with her facing away from the elevator, and she simply tells us to stop talking to her or she won't hear the elevator. Seems pretty silly, right? Why not just look at the elevator and be done with it? Well, this could all be because of a phenomenon that relates back to Gengar's origin name, Doppelganger. You know, Doppelganger, get it? Now, this does go beyond just a Japanese superstition. In fact, this is a word of German origin, meaning double walker. though there are a number of different moving parts to this. One vital piece being that if you see your doppelganger, then it is noted to be an omen of death. They have also been noted to be your spiritual double. If someone else sees your double, then you may become very sick. They are known to give malicious advice. They are your future self that have already lived your life and so much more. Tons of different ideas behind it. It's like a cryptid. And of course, when we talk to this individual waiting at the elevator, they have plenty of ellipses to signify one of two things. Either they are sick, or they are deathly afraid of what may walk out of that door, or rather the elevator. Of course, there is the chance that this is all wrong, but if this stays as a fairly isolated event, I am fully bought by this being the case, the idea of the doppelganger, especially after looking into the evidence myself. But if this does end up extending into future games and there is someone who is supposed to be the one as part of a greater story, then I suppose this was at least a really fun and cultural little walk that we took on these side roads. Does every mega evolution cause pain? Another classic question and partial mystery that we have yet to get a complete answer on. There are plenty of different scenarios that we can look at that tell us Pokemon are absolutely in pain. Tyranitar's back literally splits open, and its dex states that the only thing keeping it alive is the massive amount of excess energy flowing through it. Then there's Glalie jaw, which literally dislocates as it mega evolves, preventing it from being able to eat, and a slew of other Pokemon that are stated to go into a rage or be in general pain from the energy. Though, despite all this information, when we look in the anime, we find that there are many Pokemon that are not always in this extreme amount of pain. For example, Professor Sycamore's Mega Garchomp. Though there is the special case of Karina's Lucario, who tells us a lot, and whom she was unable to control properly upon first Mega evolving it, resulting in the energy causing it to go into a dangerous rampage. I mean, I love using the footage of Pikachu getting thrown around because it's brutal. It's not something you think you see in Pokemon a lot, but in the anime, they do it a lot. Later on, though, she's able to quell its rage, and the two of them have a better control over Mega Evolution together, preventing either of them from being hurt. This is an important detail to remember, as Mega Evolution relies on the link between trainer and Pokemon. If this link or bond isn't strong enough, then there are a number of adverse effects that can be incredibly dangerous for both trainer and Pokemon. We can see what happens when Mega Pokemon evolve without a trainer within Legends ZA through interacting and maybe even consuming Mega Shards that are growing within the city. This in turn causes them to be in an incredible amount of pain, resulting in their rampage and us having to intervene to save them and the people within the city. At the end of the day, though, it definitely seems as though many Mega Evolutions can cause pain. But are we able to assume that with the right bond, that they don't cause any pain no matter what and aren't harmful to the Pokemon? I'd personally like to believe that this is the case. One reason is that it would otherwise seem incredibly cruel and unjust to Mega Evolved Pokemon such as Tyranitar or Houndoom, who is also in constant pain. My other reason is because Pokemon's message from the very beginning has always been about having a connection between people and each other alongside nature, or connecting with nature itself as well. Not as separate entities, but all as one singular cohesive unit. It would be incredibly strange to go against this message and say that there are Mega Evolutions that are purely harmful and cruel. But, I mean, then again, the most harmful Mega Evolutions seem to also be tied to Dark-type Pokemon, which are supposed to be supervillains. There's been discourse on this over many different years, all these different years, especially when new Mega information started coming out in future regions and remakes, making all of this incredibly blurry. So I hope that ZA takes it a little bit further to explain Mega Evolution even better. And as a final note before the next entry, to me, it's like having a balloon on the verge of bursting because there's too much air in it. Mega Evolution, fills the Pokemon with an immense amount of energy, but with enough control, you can ensure that the balloon doesn't burst. Here's another short and sweet one that drove people crazy, being the locked power plant entrances that we find in Kalos. This wouldn't be as big of a deal if there wasn't an entire section in the games where you can walk all the way up to one of the doors, which is isolated, and seems like it absolutely would lead to something in the post-game at the very least, if not in the main game. I remember when I had first played, I was expecting it to open after the events of our time within the power plant, but my live stream chat told me that this was one of the locked doors that I had heard about for so many years, because I didn't play X and Y until about, I don't know, 2 years ago now. Oops. Now, this might be something that never truly gets an answer, especially as our focus within ZA is within not just Kalos, but Lumios City itself. But there have been confirmed to be underground sections that we will travel through. Because of this, I expect that there is the very small chance that we will get something that alludes to these locked entrances and maybe even have it relate back to Volcanion, considering the sheer amount of steam that we would find within the power plant. Although, I will note that even if they don't, then it isn't a big deal, considering that power plants have these types of entrances and exits all the time. I've walked through sprawling tunnels that seem endless when you're standing within them, pipes over your head and everything. These tunnels are vital for getting around from building to building when the weather is terrible. In the case of Wisconsin, cold and snowy weather, but in the case of Kalos, it would be this arid desert that nobody wants to walk through when you're working a shift. You just end up super sweaty and your clothes stick to you and it's terrible. But this could just be one of the irrelevant tunnels that were originally included in the idea of the game, but were eventually removed because it was simply redundant or not really useful.
Wait! It's time to hear from the first ever sponsor of the Acrylic VA channel, Avermedia, with their products, the Core Go and the Elite Go. These two pocket-sized blocks of beauty and tech replace the Nintendo Switch 2's dock that would never fit in your itty-bitty little pockets of your pants. Is that a Pro Max in your pocket, or are you just happy to see me? This makes them convenient and travel-friendly, especially as they can be used to charge a number of different devices, from phones to laptops to switches and more. This is done through their powerful 100-watt quick charge technology, which can take phones such as the iPhone 16 Pro Max from 0 to 50% in a matter of only 30 minutes. All this honestly makes the Core Go here perfect for on-the-go gaming. And while both of these devices have full 4K resolution pass-through for any display purposes, such as to your TV or monitor, it is the Elite Go that takes it the extra step, as it has a full 1080p 60 FPS capture card. This makes it ideal for any recording or streaming from your PC or laptop, and can even be used with your iPad for all my artists out there looking to capture your drawing process. In addition, all of the footage that you are seeing right now has been captured using these devices because I needed to test it out myself. And I mean, look at those graphics. That is buttery smooth and crisper than a McDonald's Sprite. And since you're watching my videos, odds are that you also love nature, and if that's the case, then you'll love to learn what I learned, which is that the white shell of these products feature an eco-friendly design, with its outer shell being made from 98% post-consumer recycled plastic, which means that they're doing their part to not only get rid of plastic, but also reduce as much waste as they may create in the manufacturing process, which I love to hear. Finally, I'm happy to tell you that from October 10th, today, the release of this video, through October 30th, they are running a discount on these products. Thank you once again to Avermedia for sponsoring this video. These are great products that I'm happy to have in my repertoire now. It does mean the world to have a sponsor for the first time that I can say has a good product and that I do believe in. So, once again, thank you, and back to the video.
Now there is a run-down hotel within Kalos called the Lost Hotel, or at least in the modern day that's what it's called. And while in the anime it is very clear what happened to it, whatever happened in the anime may not be the case for the games, as we often see. It's given the description: this once famous hotel clings to the shade of its former glory after tragedy left it in ruins. In the anime, this hotel is explained further to have been originally owned by a man by the name of Weston, originally before another man by the name of Mantle had challenged him over ownership of the hotel in a Pokemon battle. His Rotom, having ran away in fear, had cost him the battle, and the hotel was handed over to Mantle, who only proceeded to let it become a run-down building. It seems to thematically match the anime pretty well from the game point, and even having a Rotom appear within trash cans as an encounter alongside you being able to fight punks in the building, matching the thugs that were in the anime. For all we know, the hotel within the games, though, could be abandoned because there simply wasn't a need for it. It's at the center between La Verre, which has Valerie and a bunch of people living hippy-dippy happy lives amongst the woods, their fey dreams, and Route 17, which you can only pass with a Mamoswine, and then Lumios City itself, which has plenty of office buildings, plenty of hotels, you name it, even if we can't enter it. Makes it really feel like an unnecessary location to have a hotel at. But I suppose it would serve as a great resting spot, since the routes are way longer in reality than they actually are within the games. Though, that's as far as that really goes, and it's just saying that, hey, there might be a different reason why the hotel became abandoned than what is shown in the anime. Let's move on, as this was a pretty small mystery. Kalos is a fairly large place, with entire sections separated and organized even within their Pokédex, though one region has always been left out, and that's Southern Kalos. This was only made more of a mystery when we find Kuraway train station, which seemed significant, especially with its description of bringing people from great distances to see the huge Majestic Falls here. Majestic Falls, goodness. Leaks would eventually show that there indeed was a Southern Kalos, with what seems like 2 towns, 2 cities, 4 dungeons, which is what the Lost Hotel would be considered, and 8 total routes, all being scrapped. I typically stay away from leaks until they become far more relevant to what I'm working through, such as right now, but the real mystery here is why? Why would you cut an entire section of Kalos out? A region that people often would state felt a bit incomplete, in a game where it feels like there should have been more on a deeper level. Well, it's plain and simple. They were already making a big jump with Mega Evolution in their eyes, all within a time before they would learn it is their greatest gimmick ever, and fans would wish for its return every single day upon that Millennium Comet in the sky. I, as always, do not consider regional forms a gimmick personally, but if it is, then I would say that would be the best gimmick they ever created, but that's neither here nor there. They likely already felt pressed for time, which they've pretty much stated directly, and had already cut so much content during the development process to focus on 3D models, Mega Evolution, remaking the story, and so removing this much content was likely vital to preserve quality and not stretch things thinner, and, such as their own staff. Though, I'm very excited for the possibility that Southern Kalos may make some sort of comeback, at least in mention, even if we don't go there, even if we don't visit it via some train hopping. After all, while our story, again, does take place within New Lumios, it would be fun to fast travel to other cities or locations that will be vital to the story overall. Imagine we have all this city to walk across and move through, and then we get to visit a singular, smaller section of another city to investigate a crime or a situation happening there. I think that would be fantastic and a great lead-in to future games and stories. Here's one that constantly sparks a bit of debate in a number of different senses as we discuss whether Lysandre is alive or not. Depending on the medium in which we view it, Lysandre can really only be seen as potentially dying in 2 of the versions that he exists within. One of these instances is within the anime as he incurred the wrath of complete Zygarde through the creation of his own artificial Zygarde, intending to absorb the true Zygarde, I know we're saying Zygarde a lot, and take over the control of balance between life and death. Pretty easy to do if you control Zygarde, considering its purpose is to rise up whenever Xerneas and Yveltal are being used for evil, or if the balance between them is ruined. Stomp whoever is causing the problem, then return back to the depths for EP time. In this version, after losing his technology and watching as complete Zygarde makes a donut of artificial Zygarde, he still tries to do something. This ultimately results in Bonnie, who has control of Zygarde, I believe its name is Squishy, I love it, to unleash the ultimate move of Core Enforcer, not only finishing off the artificial creature, but also Lysandre as he falls into the green abyss of overwhelming power and is never seen again. Bonnie is a natural-born killer, while Clement is a genius. I think we have our new AZ and AZ's brother already, y'all. Easy enough to say, though, Lysandre is likely dead in that universe, at least, if not under a ton of rubble. Meanwhile, within the Pokemon Adventures manga, Lysandre is defeated and his control over the real Zygarde is released, as it has been defeated as well, and he flies, or falls rather, from the sky with Malva, who had intended to betray him after everything that he had done and learned about what his intentions were. And upon landing, there is a smattering of blood behind him on the rock. It's just there. He simply asks, why? Why did my plan fail? Before he loses consciousness, and good old Kanto's scientist Blaine checks on him. And he reports in, major damage has been done to the spinal cord, but he was still breathing. So I suppose you could say he is technically very much alive here if they can transport him without his spine crumpling in transport. So while these two instances feel clear, never trust an off-screen death, y'all. You know better than that, or at least I hope you do. In fact, even when we look at the games, he fires the ultimate weapon, but it isn't clarified which version he fired. A beam of eternal life, or a beam of death and destruction. When we look at Pokemon Evolutions, which is a short series from Pokemon that gives us scenes from the games in detail and sticks true to them, Lysandre clearly states that he will grant eternal life to our protagonists. He states how he wants to curse us with it, to allow us to walk the earth for millennia and feel the same pain and understanding that he has come to know. And this isn't him stating he's been around eternally, he's just claiming he's burdened with the knowledge of the world. After all, he, at least, has seen AZ's information, talked with him, is a descendant of AZ's brother, and, admittedly, is a bit of a genius. Too bad he got it twisted at one point and went off the deep end. Either way, even when he fires the weapon here, he causes a great bit of destruction and then isn't found. This means that no matter which beam you fire, you have the potential of causing destruction. I don't know why, I don't make the rules, and even in his mania, I sincerely doubt Lysandre would make such a mistake, even if it would be very fitting story-wise. So, with our understanding of Lysandre never being confirmed to be dead, and how he may even be immortal within the games, I know I'll be keeping my eyes open as I play through ZA. You should absolutely, by the way, join me in my live streams, because day one, I will be streaming my playthrough of it live here on this channel. Not on Twitch, here on YouTube. And I know there's been speculation that it could be Vinny, that, you know, Lysandre could be Vinny, considering the gloves, the facial shape, the facial hair, and even the shades, but that of course could simply be a red herring. It would also be fitting though, considering he has a Pancham and a Baneri as accessories, denoting Pancham as his past ruffian nature, and Baneri representative as a brighter and more innocent, hopefully, future. I personally hope it is, and Lysandre is just out there somewhere existing within Lumios, and we get to see a potential change in him. Or rather that it's not Vinny. After all, he was afraid of the world growing too much and resources being fought over in wars, and New Lumios exists as a remodel and expansion project to make homes for Pokemon alongside people. This is something that, if done right, can prove Lysandre wrong while also doing a lot of good for the world, people, and Pokemon. Though of course, nothing is better than true nature for any animal. New Lumios kind of seems like a bit of a zoo. But as a final shot in the dark, maybe Lysandre loves the New Lumios, and whatever comes to threaten it is something that he'll help fight against in some capacity thanks to his change in heart. After all, the people of Kalos did not celebrate his death. They did mourn his loss, at least shown through the Professor and in Pokemon Generations. I would also be okay with him being deceased, considering he is a pretty terrible person when he wanted to, you know, wipe out humanity. But knowing the whole revival thing that happened with Floette, you know, maybe Team Flare will try to revive him. I know I said the last thing was the last shot in the dark, but there's so many different theories, so many different things you could go with that could be amazing as long as it's done properly. But let's move on. The origin of Hoopa's lamp could tell us a lot about Hoopa, why it does what it does, and why it's back slamming down Mega Stones throughout the universe of Pokemon. Come on, Hoopa! You just made things, hopefully, less complicated, but you really just kind of threw a wrench into a lot of different theories. But by all means, the prison that it is encased in, that little genie lamp, is called the prison bottle, of course being made to hold Hoopa from when it was in its unbound form, which caused immeasurable destruction in another time and place. We know nothing of what that time and place was, or how Hoopa ended up with a Pokemon employee and then given to us, which is funny that the equivalent of a worker tired with his day is given a lamp of horrifying cosmic power. This isn't a joke, by the way. A clerk literally tells us all about how some creepy guy came in, forced him to trade everything within reach for the package that this guy has, and then left saying, 3 days. For a mere 3 days will Hoopa be unbound. And the response of the clerk as this guy left, really? I was all, stop freaking me out with this nonsense. I was like sweating. The back of my shirt was soaked. Anyway, nothing I could do, so I opened the package and it's just a dirty old bottle. Like, really? So I go, weirdness, wonder what's in it. I grab the stopper and carefully pull it loose. Blah! It popped open, but there was nothing inside. So I figure I got totally fooled. Thanks for listening to my story. You know what? I'm gonna give you the bottle from that night, because you're so nice. It's not doing me any good anyway, really. In the animated series, there are characters, though, that are very Middle Eastern in their stereotypical design who have the bottle within specifically the Hoopa movie. What's interesting is we do get to learn about Arch Valley, how it was granted to the people of Arceus. Oh, it's Arc Valley. A-R-C-H-E, Arc Valley, Arceus, that makes sense. And then the destruction Hoopa Unbound caused before the plates of Arceus were used to create the prison bottle. Now, of course, we understand that Hoopa is a mythical, distributed to the games as a promotion for the movie. And we can take the lore at face value and assume that Hoopa's story on the planet begins in Arc Valley. But that still does not tell us the origin of Hoopa, where it came from, why it exists, and why in the world can it summon and control just about every single legendary in existence, including Dialga, Pocky, and Giratina. It's wild, it's awesome, it's cool, but it's wild. You know, the origin Pokemon that were created directly under Arceus' control, these aren't fakes either. These are the real deal terrifying titans of the Pokemon universe. It's because of this that people have speculated that Hoopa may be equal to Arceus or very close to equal. Maybe Hoopa Unbound is still incomplete, and through some sort of higher evolution, I don't know what that could be, it may reach its full capacity. Maybe through some sort of mega form, Hoopa Unbound becomes Hoopa Unbounder. I don't know. It seems ridiculous, but so does the sheer amount of raw power this Pokemon has, in addition to us really not knowing the story behind it. Maybe the reason Hoopa is opening up the Mega Dimension and traveling between the dimensions is so it can find its home, a Mega Stone, or some other form of power to bring it back to its true original form. Not just this, I can last for 3 days in my unbound form. If so, I would be very down for the boss battle that this will result in. And if I am correct on this or anything else that I've talked about and like really throw my hat into, you know I'm going to be super giddy about this. While there are many questions regarding King AZ, I've split them up into different parts as I find some of them more interesting and potentially deeper than others. For example, here we're going to talk about AZ's relation to the Kings of Unova, because while there are tons of speculation that AZ may be one of the Unovan kings, it gets incredibly messy overall. In some instances, there are individuals who even claim that AZ and his brother were the original brothers who fought with each other and caused the splitting of the original dragon. Though the major issue with this is that while AZ and his unnamed brother were essentially a sort of moral battle between the sharing of intelligence, which can be described as a wealth of knowledge, with the opposing side being his greedy brother, who caused the war, as not only he, but many other regions sought after the power and knowledge that AZ and Kalos had overall, directly stated. The war between the haves and the have-nots, those with and those without, will never end. All that changes is what they're specifically fighting for. Knowledge, wealth, power, resources like water, you name it. This is a real-life issue. But in the case of the brothers of Unova, they simply sought different ways of life, not a battle over having something. Guides of truth or ideals were what they fought over, both originally belonging to the true original dragon, something that we could consider to be a god in its own right. After all, truth and ideals are the same thing at the end of the day. One's own truth and one's own ideals are a gray area that is no different than truth against belief. You can't change someone's belief, and you can't change the truth. That is, unless you're a tyrannical leader, ruining everything that science and history stands for in your baby rage of making the world in your image. There should be many different so-called leaders throughout history that come to mind with that statement. I'm gonna pick Emperor Nero, because he killed people if they didn't cheer for him during his terrible plays, and he fed his horse golden oats. He was a horrid person. But moving on, there's a distinct separation that is here, and I have to state it because it's common speculation. And one of the details here, amongst many other details, ties what we'll discuss later, showing AZ and how these brothers may have interacted. One such interaction is within the abyssal ruins of Unova, a place where the many plates of Arceus can be found alongside relics, a crown, a message from the past recounting the history of what happened here. They can be summarized cohesively as the following, as I explain each section written to you. Have the heart of king, praise him, for his light shines and he moves his people with acts of love. He fought hatred and never got lost. So go on, brave king. These are the traits of their king, a person who stood as a true leader and was inspiring, a person with a good heart and a good mind that people followed in his bravery. Next section, life is gratitude and eating is life. Good or evil isn't all. Do not be barbaric and do not waste. All is precious, the wars create tears. Good and evil is a concept of humanity. Animals take what they need, protect what they love, and we are no different at the end of the day. Though to have war is to create tears. It is to be a barbarian that wastes life as we know it, as the ground we farm is stepped on and ruined, showing a lack of gratitude. Next section. King talks to all beings. He saved us from the waves, and he is hope for all. Think and act with love, act strong. The king was an ambassador. He spoke to more than just other kings or other humans. He spoke to all beings. This is a trait that is explained to exist not only in the king, but in N as well. The ability to speak to Pokemon. Of course, Ghetsis hates this concept and calls N a freak with an inhuman heart, but he's just jealous and hates everything that breathes the same air that he does. The final section, though, is the hardest to understand, with 3 symbols being technically solved. Also, I didn't state it. The people that were in the abyssal ruins were saved is what part of that also meant. Anywho, we have a symbol looking like a human for humanity. A symbol looking like a broken Tau symbol to represent Reshiram and Zekrom. A symbol that does admittedly look more like a fish, but I interpret as representing a Pokemon. And the final symbol looking similar to the Fleur de Lis, which is what the ultimate weapon is similar to, and what Lysandre is named after. In full, or at least the passage, King defeated humanity alone. The Tau Dragons, Reshiram and Zekrom, joined the king in a day. The king called Pokemon beings, the great King Harmonia. And yet all of this isn't even within Kalos. This information is found within Unova, which sparked so much intrigue and interest into what happened here, how it's tied to Kalos, when Kalos was released, and then so much more. Despite it all, we have yet to have any confirmed final answers on this subject and can hope to have this mystery closed one day. But for my own theory on it, it is as simple as the story states it is. AZ was the Great King, an individual that would have ushered in the new age after ending the war. AZ is someone who would be intelligent enough to help the people he just defeated in a war, because if you just leave them destitute, then another war will begin as a fight for the scraps and survival. Through uniting people, Pokemon, and any world leaders willing to listen to him, he would then be able to rebuild, even if for a short time. The original heroes of Unova witnessed the power of the ultimate weapon from afar. They, having agreed that one is no better than the other as per their story, then rode upon Reshiram and Zekrom immediately to investigate further. Then, after witnessing the wanton destruction that was laid before them, they found that AZ was balanced between truth and ideals. AZ's ideal was to live with his Floette happily in a world where his technology would thrive and people would live. But when faced with the truth, he did not give up these ideals, but rather adjusted to the truth before him and had struck back at the world for taking his Floette. This can be supported by even N stating how the balance between truth and ideals is found within the player character within the games of Black and White, and how Getzis apparently sees this as a good thing. This would make it so that our two heroes, who could not see each other's side but simply accepted it, would look upon AZ in reverence and sit before the king, bow before the king that had decided to defeat all of humanity alone, put an end to the war, and bring about an age of peace. Because a war does not simply end in a day. There are always people who keep attacking and pushing on, those who act in opposition, and information itself does not pass by as quickly then as it does now. And so, the king was given the title of Great King Harmonia. This last name would be passed on not to the next of kin, as this was not AZ's true name, but rather a nickname given by the heroes and a last name that would be passed down from themselves through time as Unova and Kalos would form an alliance. AZ would not be in the right mindset to take this title and would eventually leave. From here, his brother may have even taken the throne. We know that his diaries were passed down as he buried the ultimate weapon and told his children of the horrors of this device beyond what humanity should wield. And the rest is history, a Swiss cheese of a history with a lot of details left out, of course. Oops. But any deeper explanation of AZ's relation to the legendary heroes of Unova would be fantastic, and I hold my hopes out. And before we continue, I just want to say, thank you so much for watching. Please do make sure you've subscribed if you made it this far, and as you listen to the rest of the video, leave a comment telling me your theories. Are there any theories you have that are held by strong evidence? Do you agree or disagree with anything that I say? Let me know, and you'll be helping the channel the best way you can for free, as comments and watch time are the best way to help boost the video as told by YouTube itself. You can always go the extra mile and become a member for as little as $3 a month, granting you special perks like behind the scenes updates. But once again, I do want to thank you, especially now that with your assistance, I've been able to afford a teleprompter, which is why I'm able to speak to the camera directly now. So thank you guys very much for your support. I cannot express that enough. But enough of this, and back to the video. On a shorter note, I just want to know more about the lands that Floette traveled to. We have over 3,000 years of history where we only know of one location that it visited. This location would actually be within Hoenn after AZ planted the tree in front of the Cave of Origin. It's simple, but when we visit there, we get to see Floette's flower. A flower that is otherwise thought to be extinct within the world and only belongs to this Floette. This isn't dropped off by the Pokemon after they reunite, because the events of Auras take place before Pokemon X and Y, and of course now we have confirmation that Floette is still holding the flower. We can then assume that Floette is resting nearby and will return at some point for its flower before reuniting with AZ. But where did it go? Very much like other Pokemon who don't appear during War and Strife, it seems like Floette would also be avoiding anyone who would cause great turmoil, but that doesn't tell us anything about where it went and what it was doing all this time. No real speculation to have here, I'm just curious. We know that while Rayquaza may have been the first Mega Evolution, Lucario is the first Pokemon to have undergone Mega Evolution with a trainer's assistance. This is a tale told through the old Kalos legend and the Tower of Mastery, where we receive our first Mega Stone, and Lucario joins us on our journey, allowing us to parallel the past as we become a hero of the modern day. but there is nothing stating that the old trainer who first Mega Evolved Lucario was a hero, nor does it tell us where they come from, as this trainer is noted to have been from a different region. Karina's grandfather, Gherkin, is the Mega Evolution Guru, being the one to explain Mega Evolution and give the Mega Ring to us, showing us just how important he is. There's also tons of speculation that he is a Draconid or related to AZ, and this all becomes even more complicated as within the Adventures manga, he is a source for many of the keystones that major characters receive, even champions. He is a very strange man with a very strange past, and there is the chance that he is the descendant of the person who first Mega Evolved their Pokemon. So I suppose that this is two mysteries in one that could be solved: the story of the original trainer and the past of Gherkin. While it seems a little bit dumb on the surface, it is still important to ask why Zygarde is so well known as the protector or guardian of the ecosystems. Because while there are plenty of modern day instances of Zygarde saving the day, it doesn't have as much of an established past as other legendary Pokemon. For example, Lugia and Ho-Oh have their established towers within Johto, in addition to the tower that was turned into the Goldenrod Radio Tower. Or when we look at Calyrex, who has an entire span of time where it was worshipped, and when it stopped being worshipped, it lost its powers. Same can be said about all four of the Regis, as they were also worshipped within Hoenn, the Tapus, Ultra Necrozma, the Ruinous Quartet. The list goes on and on and on with all these brief stories of their past that we don't see in the games, but at least hear about. Yet we have nothing about Zygarde's past whatsoever, just that it appears when the world is in trouble, like a little Superman snake. I do love Zygarde, there's a reason why it's on the top shelf there, but anywho, in the modern day, depending on the version in which you look at, Zygarde accomplishes a great deal of things. It has fought against Ultra Necrozma in the manga, it defeated the artificial Zygarde, and of course it overpowers Xerneas and Yveltal. Even in the games, there originally was going to be a story where Zygarde was intended to fight against an Ultra Beast at End Cave, but don't worry about that. We'll talk more about Zygarde and its connection with Ultra Beasts later on. I'm just saying we need some good, deeper background lore on Zygarde, especially with it recognizing Ultra Beasts and being a strong counter to them as well. There are two Pokemon that have changed history as we know it, with one of them having a Mega revealed recently. I'm talking about Aegislash and Malamar, or Aegislash. I'm not really sure how to say that name. Either way, for Aegislash, its dex entries directly state its potent spectral powers allow it to manipulate others. It once used its powers to force people and Pokemon to build a kingdom to its liking. Once upon a time, a king with an Aegislash reigned over the land. His Pokemon eventually drained him of life, and his kingdom fell with him. This wasn't a one-time thing either. This is something that happened many times, or at least was influenced to happen many times, as they are noted to apparently be able to detect the innate qualities of leadership. According to the legend, whoever it recognizes is destined to become king after all. Yet despite 3 different dex entries giving us all of this information, we don't know about any fallen kingdoms due to Aegislash. The closest we could get to understanding that information comes from, or where that information comes from, is due to their first form, Honedge, being located just outside of Parfum Palace. Now, Parfum Palace does have a lot of strange history about it, but we're saving that monster for later. Instead, we can talk about Malamar as well, who is a bit of a demon, arguably the most evil Pokemon of all time. When it comes to strong hypnosis, there's an endless number of people who utilize Malamar for their nefarious deeds. It's said that Malamar's hypnotic powers played a role in certain history-changing events, and anyone who falls under their control loses their memories. And to make matters worse, we do have information from its Mega form. This vividly colored light further amplifies the Pokemon's hypnotic abilities, allowing it to freely overwrite the personalities or even memories of others. A terrifying power that can make someone seem like an entirely different person. Oh no, I used my Mega Malamar to get rid of my social anxiety. Oh no, whatever will I do? Anywho, this is the probably greatest sign that Malamar has done some nefarious work and will continue to do so. I have claimed for nearly a full year that this Pokemon would do something like this, and we finally get to see it in full action in the reveal that we received regarding that Mega Evolution. But here's the problem. Why do we know about this in the first place? Was there a sort of war that occurred between people that were constructed by Aegislash and Malamar? And will the advent of Malamar's Mega form mean that Aegislash will also get one, potentially resulting in a reigniting of potential massive problems through at least part of ZA's story? These are the things that I'm very excited to find out. The last of our shallow mystery section is simply the question on whether the Unown will be brought back or not. The Unown have a massive deep history to them, being the Eyes of Arceus itself, which I have a whole video explaining. But while they are a significant Pokemon throughout history, they cannot be encountered in the wild since Unova. You can trade them in, but they otherwise only take home in Johto, Hoenn, in Oris at least, and Sinnoh/Hisui. This isn't to say that Arceus doesn't play a significant role in any of these places either. In fact, there are some strong ties to Arceus in a number of these places. In Unova, you can encounter the Lake Guardians, who are able to arrive thanks to a special cave connected to Sinnoh. Kalos doesn't have as much of a connection unless you do consider the Pokemon who literally represent life and death to be the connection, which I kinda do. In Alola, the Aether Foundation created Type Null through the RKS system. This system being developed thanks to the information found within the Kanalov library of Sinnoh. In Galar, they took this information and it resulted in additional Type Null being created. Though in Paldea, the Unown are flat out unobtainable, and from what I could find, are not mentioned anywhere at all at any time. They're basically non-existent within these lands. In fact, Paldea may have the least ties to Sinnoh and Arceus amongst any other region whatsoever, but it does have a very deep connection we'll come across later. Though back to the Unown, they played a very prominent role within Legends Arceus, appearing in every single major location in which an event occurs, hiding just out of sight and just watching us very closely, monitoring our progress. This is very similar to what we have with Zygarde, a creature that stays just out of sight by even turning invisible and just watching the world. It observes and waits to see if action has to be taken. Even if the Unown don't return, then there's the easy recreation of spending your time scouring the city in search of Zygarde throughout your journeys, and I'd be plenty okay with that. Now we dig into the mid-tier mysteries, ones that people may not know about, ones that feel like they've had more questions raised about them, and even if some are short and still goofy, I find them interesting, so I put them here. One such mystery is a bit creepy, as within the Lumios City train station there is a message hidden on the back of one of the boards that reads, "I'm going to go for help. Wait in the usual place." Time to break out the forensic science degree. Not that it actually helps me here. This is all a digital world after all, but I can try. Train stations are an incredibly busy place typically, meaning it would be a great place to leave a message or meet up with someone and not get caught due to all the hustle and bustle. The message could be interpreted for a number of people, and the most common are people who work there and people who would already know to look for this message here. It doesn't narrow down the possibilities all that much, but it still needs to be stated as part of an investigation. Telling someone to wait in the usual place could also mean anything, but specifically stating they're going to go for help is what throws everything in a bit of a spin. Are they taking the train? If they are, did they go to Kalos City, or did they go to South Kalos, which is unreachable to us? And what was the threat that they were facing? When we look at Kalos, it is the only city in Kalos without a gym. They sell specialty Cinnabarian hamburger steak, which is in relation to Cinnabar Island of the first generation with Blaine. But there's one other piece to it. A Team Flare grunt can be found in a house near the northwestern corner of the city, living with a punk girl. He will tell the player of what happened to Team Flare after their defeat. No gym, no greater power of authority, a secret spot, a Team Flare grunt. It may be circumstantial evidence at best, but I think we've assumed the writer of the note was a person of positive background incorrectly. I believe that when everything started falling apart, this Team Flare grunt decided to return to their home, which is a pretty usual place, to be at or meet up. They may have wanted to go for help, but it was futile and gave up. This is, of course, assuming that there wasn't a side quest within Southern Kalos that was related to this, in which case my theory falls apart, but that's showbiz, baby. It would be interesting to find out that maybe he did go to another place, came back, came to this home, talked with the punk girl, and then, again, it all unraveled from there anyway, and it was all meaningless to try and go for help. Who knows? While you and I know of the war that occurred over 3,000 years ago, there was another war within Kalos 300 years ago. The Parfum Palace was once the home of the King of Kalos, and has the fitting style for a regal man. Many statues honoring the knights and Pokemon who fought in the 300-year-old war are on display inside, including those of a Bisharp general, which once led a legion of Ponyard into battle. Doesn't seem like much of a hero story considering those are dark types, they're supposed to be evil. But the entrance hall also contains a statue of Melodic, said to be the most beautiful Pokemon in the world. Now, there are many other mysteries regarding Parfum Palace that we will discuss later on in great detail. I'm sorry that I keep teasing you. Though it has been suspected that this war, which was against neighboring regions 300 years ago, may allude to the War of the Spanish Succession, which occurred between 1701 and 1714, and the Treaty of Utrecht, which was in 1713. This conflict, fought over the vacant Spanish throne, set France against a coalition of European powers, namely the Holy Roman Empire, Great Britain, the Dutch Republic, and Savoy, and concluded with the French Bourbon dynasty securing the Spanish crown. The timing is notable, as these events occurred 300 years before the release of Pokemon X and Y in 2013. In addition, the Palace of Versailles, the likely real-world inspiration for Parfum Palace, had by then been completed in the form recognized today. Very interesting that we get this major event placed here, though instead of the Spanish throne, it may have very well been the Kalosian throne after AZ ended the war, unless they went to war with Paldea, which doesn't really line up because Paldea doesn't really say anything about them going to war. Instead, they spent all of their resources digging deep into the earth. That would be Area Zero. I know that I said AZ likely stuck around for a short bit, but I have to be open-minded and consider all the possibilities. Plus, if they decide to take this further, then we have yet to see a Roman or Dutch-inspired region, we have Galar for the UK, and Savoy would eventually be given to France after a long and complicated history that I'm not going to talk about here. Pokemon loves to parallel the real-world's history, but also loves to twist things around. My favorite is to talk about Hisui taking place at the end of the Edo period, thanks to many different factors, which the Edo period ended in 1868, and while that isn't exactly 300 years ago, it would show a very interesting detail to us, because if war broke out in 300 years ago, then it would still fit nicely into our timeline. This is because at the end of the Edo period, Japan was kind of forced to open its borders in real life and conducted trade, which began the industrial boom, which is shown through our smokestack Galarian wheezing. And one of these days, I just need to sit down and make the complete Pokemon timeline and a complete Pokemon family tree. Those are major projects, but I'll get there. I'm just one guy doing this, but continue supporting the channel and I'll get there one of these days. Back on track though, we really know nothing else regarding this war that happened. In fact, it's something that is forgotten again and again by people and theorists within the community all the time, including myself. And the reason why other wars or other periods in time are important is because with all the different twists that Pokemon likes to do, it might crunch the numbers, shorten time spans or time frames, and say that because of one war, then this happened instead of other wars causing what they do in real life. This, though, does remind me of the war that Lieutenant Surge claims to have been a part of, and while a lot of people have attributed Surge to have potentially been involved in a number of different wars, ranging from Vietnam to Gulf and other potential wars as the lightning American that he is, or even how there is the war between people and Pokemon within Unova, where the Swords of Justice protected Pokemon from the destruction of humanity and their war between each other. There are just a lot of wars within Pokemon that you would not expect, and we know very little about them, and I really hope to learn more. I feel like a broken record. I feel like I've said it like 6 or 7 times. Oops. Seeing Mabel in Legends ZA as a professor or acting professor has sparked a lot of questions, but the largest of them is what happened to the rest of Team Flare? We have Malva, who was also a member of the Elite Four alongside Aliana, Brioni, Celosia, and Xerneas, that little rat that he is. While Xerneas was the reason behind the creation of the expansion suit which controlled Emma, he was eventually stopped and put away behind bars. Though I guess now that I've mentioned it, we have to take a mini detour to talk about that event, because Emma was a homeless individual that was eventually taken in by Looker. Through her eventually accepting his kindness, she found a home and learned how to read. Though Looker's wallet, as he notes himself, not to Emma, was getting thinner and thinner, and she started to wonder if she was a burden to him. So Emma began to seek out new ways to get money and help out. She would be testing out Xerneas' expansion suit, which would grant great physical capabilities and even allow her to transform like a Pokemon, as Looker would say. But this in turn would also cause her to be mind-controlled with no memory of her actions. She would commit crimes while unconscious until this is stopped and Xerneas is put behind bars, and there is some question as to whether or not she will continue to use the suit. It seems that she just might now that she heads the office within Lumios thanks to Looker giving it to her, and with the remote control function of the suit being deactivated, there's no reason not to use it. In fact, she is even asked by Xerneas himself to take his Pokemon and the suit and use it to protect the peace of Lumios City, meaning she's gonna be wearing that killer gear for sure. And do you know what Pokemon Xerneas had? A Crobat and a Malamar. So I think I know what Mega Emma will be getting, unless they left field it and give her a Mega Meowstic, which that'd be pretty cool. Now that that's out of the way though, how about we move on to the rest of Team Flare, starting with Malva. She does help with stopping Xerneas, but is seemingly never discovered to have been a part of Team Flare. She even continues to be an Elite Four member and news reporter after their downfall. Kind of ironic, she reports in on the downfall of Lysandre and Team Flare while being an ex-member. She also has a butler by the name of Chalmers who claims himself to be a former admin of Team Flare sent to talk to you by Malva. It's funny as well because he's bald when he looks like an admin, which he just looks like Pitbull, you know, Mr. Worldwide. We can imagine they haven't changed in what they're doing and were likely some of the more benevolent of the bunch before things went south and they realized just how bad things actually were. Celosia recognizes the fault in what they're doing, but otherwise has no information on what her fate is. She states the following as her last line within the games. In reality, those stones that line Route 10 are the graves of Pokemon. When the ultimate weapon was used to end that horrible war over 3,000 years ago, it stole the lives of all those Pokemon. Their lives were the price of peace then, and if we want to make our own wishes come true today, we in Team Flare also have to sacrifice something precious. Break a couple eggs to make an omelet. Sure, but she is really underselling this when Team Flare is committing genocide to make their omelet, and it's not even filling. To cover our bases, Mabel's one final dialogue after we defeat her was the power of the legendary Pokemon, the power to grant life to all around it, the power to steal life from all around it. It's a mysterious ability that even scientists like us haven't been able to really decode. What do you think would happen to the world if we fuel the ultimate weapon with something like that? Fitting that she would then become an acting professor or be looking to become a professor, as those are words that seem to have a fear behind them, a fear of whatever the outcome may be. She also has had a Houndoom that didn't Mega Evolve and a Weavile, so do with that information what you will. With Brioni, she is at least shown to be captured by Clement in the anime, so it would be funny to see her also return with a more positive and scientific role. Then there's Aliana, with her final dialogue, I had fun at the Kalos power plant. Of course, we could have generated electricity with Team Flare's technology too, you know, we just didn't think it justified the cost. To create a world for us and us alone, we have to play it smart, you see? That sounds like villain talk to me, someone who definitely didn't learn their lesson after being defeated, so yeah, it's kind of spooky, but she also gets captured by Clement in the anime. As a side, while they all had Pokemon that I won't go over, Aliana here has a Druddigon and a Mightyena. And while I think Druddigon is more fitting to get a Mega Evolution, I would be overjoyed to see Mightyena with one, my dear baby boy Ed. With all these members though, and not knowing where the majority of them are, it brings a lot of questions to mind, especially since we don't know if some of them are trying to revive Team Flare plans. I at least hope we do get more from Malva, since she is confirmed to know classified information regarding Team Flare, so she may be the lead we need to investigate the whereabouts of the rest of their members. Volcanion is a massive mystery, and the only reason I put it here instead of in the deeper mystery section is because it's just in that gray area for me as to whether it could be amazing or just lackluster. While it is effectively a Kalos Pokemon, it may not even be from Kalos and has some strange ties to other Pokemon within the world. For example, it seems as though it has a deeper relation with Magearna of Generation 7, another metallic Pokemon that was actually created through the use of infinite energy. We don't know how Volcanion was created, but many do assume that it is a man-made Pokemon because of this connection, in addition to its design and abilities. The most important ability is its steam power, as it doesn't create water itself or draw moisture from the air. It needs to fill something inside of its body with water in order to then use its organ to superheat and create steam. Seems pretty robotic, but at the same time, it isn't the only Pokemon that is part robot, part organic, and that can't create water and just uses water for their powers, such is the case with Staryu and Starmie, at least within the anime. But Kalos isn't the only region it appears in, as you can find out within Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire that it has been sighted in Kalos, Johto, and Sinnoh, with Brandon having led expeditions to search for it in those regions. Brandon is the Frontier Brain and Chief of the Battle Frontiers Battle Pyramid, the only one to have the Pyramid King title. He's also only been shown to have legendary Pokemon made up of the original 3 Regis and the legendary Bird Trio as his 2 signature teams. In fact, he consistently has a legendary giant as part of his team through Masters EX and even the Adventures manga. I kinda expect him to appear in ZA now, since the tower is supposed to bring people from all over into Lumios. All we really know for sure about Volcanion is that it had a hatred of humans and was targeting the Azoth Kingdom to retrieve the man-made Pokemon Magearna, of whom only it knew Volcanion's true identity. Speaking of Magearna, this is about to get wild in ways that you would never expect, because Magearna hails from what is called the Azoth Kingdom, as I stated. And Azoth is a term that has had its nails deep in this franchise, and Azoth is its direct translated name as well. It is a universal remedy, or the real-life Azoth, a potent solvent, as another thing, sought after in the realm of alchemy, akin to alkahest, a distinct alchemical substance. The quest for Azoth was the crux of numerous alchemical endeavors, symbolized by the catechus, initially coined to denote an esoteric formula pursued by alchemists akin to the Philosopher's Stone. The term Azoth later evolved into a poetic expression for the element Mercury. And if you have been into Pokemon theorizing for a long time, then you know exactly where I'm going with this. If you are not, then buckle up, because Azoth is the project that Oris, Archie, and Maxie were completing in order to return the world back to its primal state and restart everything. A Garden of Eden, if you would. Azoth relates back to alchemy, Mercury, and even phosphorus, which is exactly what Reshiram and Zekrom represent. Azoth and its Philosopher's Stone relation connects back to Magearna, who has a literal soul heart created by taking the life energy of other Pokemon in order to fuel it. And fueling the life of a Pokemon in this way, extending their lives and incredible knowledge through alchemy, relates immediately back to AZ and Eternal Floette. There are moments like this where I sit and I look at people who are like, oh, theorists for games like Pokemon are just stretching, and I sit down and I go, do you realize how obvious this is? And we've just been ignoring it? It's insane. But then, similar to the ultimate weapon, Magearna served as both a positive and a negative icon. It was a gift to the princess, a gift to guide her, give her company, and to bring peace. But it also had the capability to control a massive flying fortress that served as a weapon for mass destruction, as it was equipped with a powerful laser cannon, the massive flying fortress, that is. But doesn't all of that sound familiar? I'm not even joking when I said that originally this section was just going to be about Magearna in brief, mention the Soul Heart, Philosopher's Stone, until I read the word Azoth with Volcanion. Then everything in my brain just immediately fell apart. And the largest piece of this is that a grunt in the games with an Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire suggests that A and Z in the project's Azoth name represents beginning and end respectively. I think I can feel the headache coming on. Look, if Azoth, or the idea of it, isn't talked about once within Legends ZA, this is another thing I'm going to mentally throw a fit about, because it is the perfect opportunity to bring all of this writing full circle. I could care less that it's Pokemon at this point. If it is not, done as part of a writing lover, I'm going to lose my mind. But let's move on before I do it right now. On a lighter and simpler note, give me more of AZ's travels. While they weren't significant enough to change his outlook on life and realize what it is like to be one with Pokemon truly as a trainer, I am curious. I say this because he has one other significant moment within the Pokemon world that we know of, as he was there when Mega Rayquaza saved the Draconids. Although not by name, AZ is mentioned several times during the Delta episode of Pokemon Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire. Mr. Stone mentions that his grandfather used Infinity Energy, and the same energy used by the Ultimate Weapon to improve the lives of people and Pokemon alike, which the Devon Corporation used to grow into one of the top industries in Hoenn. When the player overhears Wallace's conversation with his master, they discuss that the tree planted in front of the entrance to the Cave of Origin was given to the people of Pseutopolis by a huge man who visited from the Kalos region. As mentioned, underneath the tree, there is a flower of the same kind as the one carried by AZ's Eternal Floette. At the Sky Pillar, Zinnia tells the player that 1,000 years ago, a tall visitor from a distant land witnessed how Mega Rayquaza stopped a fight between Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre. He is quoted to have said, "It is the Delta, born of the great disturbances in this world, by the bonds born of mankind's wish, and the power of the stones. It will calm the troubles that plague the world." How he came to understand this information is unknown. Not that one. The places he has been to are unknown. All that is known is that he wanted the world for quite some time. There's no real limitation as to where he could go. He has a Golurk, which has infinite amounts of energy. Interesting, that one. And can just fly at Mach speeds. So I just want to know more about what he did with his life, and if he ever went back after he reunited with his Floette, or what places he did go back to. I was going to stop this section here, but then I saw, while writing the script, that Pokemon announced a Mega Rayquaza raid in Pokemon Go on the 18th. 2 days after the Legends ZA releases. This is no coincidence. Get ready for more Mega Rayquaza shenanigans. Maybe it'll be our ride through the Mega Dimensions. I don't know. That's just me throwing spaghetti at the wall, because I just barely saw that. Speaking of the Mega Dimension, though, that singular piece of story has the potential of solving our timeline issue within Pokemon. With the advent of Mega Pokemon, it has always been questioned if AZ firing the Ultimate Weapon, which resulted in Mega Stones being brought into existence, caused the splitting of timelines, thus creating a timeline with Megas and one without. This would show us that the original adventures with Red doesn't have them, but the Let's Go games have Mega Pokemon. It shows Megas existing within the Oris version of Hoenn, but not in the original Hoenn. And then of course we get Annabelle, who has traveled from Hoenn from a different dimension. To muddle things up further, multiple timelines and universes already exist, as we can hop between them or drag Pokemon from them since nearly the very beginning. Bill, the OG Pokemon super scientist, had created a time capsule. Actually, he has a southern voice, so it'd be more like, the Pokemon super scientist had created a time capsule that allows the trading between the original Gen 1 and Gen 2 games. There's Volo, who is suspected of time travel, while Professor Toro and Sada didn't travel through time, technically they eventually did, but instead brought Pokemon in from other universes. To quickly explain that one, the future and past Paradox Pokemon are confirmed to be real and should be ancestor or future versions of the Pokemon we have, but there's a problem with that. If they were real, then the Paldean professors would cause massive problems in our timeline, disrupting them by removing an ancestor from it. So they have ultimately actually grabbed Pokemon from alternate timelines that mimic our own past and future, thus granting the paradox Pokemon their paradoxical nature. Because after all, a paradox is described as a statement or concept that appears contradictory, logically unacceptable, or counterintuitive, but may actually contain a deeper truth upon further examination, meaning these truly are past and future Pokemon. Stepping away from that though, we also have Sun and Moon games, which allow us to travel between dimension of not only Ultra Space, but also between the alternate dimensions of the Sun and Moon games themselves. Time and space travel is nothing new, but with all the traveling that is happening, you can understand why things are so incredibly spaghetti, just complicated, just absolutely tied together. It's like throwing your headphones into your pocket and hoping everything works out, except you're messing with timelines and space itself. And now we throw Hoopa into the mix, which I just realized I made the claim that Hoopa will be the one to fix the timeline issue, when in fact that chaotic little gremlin, that I do love, will likely only make things even more chaotic, since it's basically the Loki of Pokemon, even though it's more of Arabic or Arabic origin. Either way, we're doomed. We're absolutely doomed. So while I would love for ZA to give us some answers and help us fix the timeline, maybe even let us see past and future version of characters through our dimensional travel, you know, see like multiple versions of Red, that'd be kind of cool. It might just make things messier, but I'm all here for the fun and the chaos of it at the end of the day, and I'm just being overdramatic for entertainment. A small but sad mystery is the abandonment of two Skiddo in front of the train station. They can be seen sleeping together, but they're noted to have been there for years as they wait for their trainer that abandoned them. And while I want to find out who that trainer is and throw them in a trash bin if they aren't dead, this is likely a reference to Hachiko, a Japanese story of a dog left by its master at a train station. Hachiko was an Aikido dog who waited almost 10 years for their master, who had actually passed away, and now I'm sad and I feel bad. Oh boy. After Ueno's death, Hachiko was treated very poorly by most people who worked at or came to Shibuya Station, or so it's stated. This, though, did not deter him. After he became nationally known, his story of fidelity and loyalty grew, and he became to be treated better. He also had significant health problems his entire life. After he became known internationally, his story led to Helen Keller, wild jump here in the story, bringing the first Akita to America. Since his death, he continues to be remembered worldwide in popular culture with statues, movies, and books. I did read more on the story, but I'd rather not make myself or you sad by telling you the full tale, just like I made all of us sad with the tale of elephants in one of my past videos. If you know the one, you know the one. I do hope, though, that these Skiddo do get a happier story and the individual returns from some ridiculous situation like being thrown through ultra space, but still remembers their babies. That would be nice. The Chamber of Emptiness might be me overthinking, but it isn't something I can ignore, because it is literally an empty cave with only the Mega Stone for Banette and the Spooky Plate for Arceus within it. The place is directly translated as Hollow Room. The only way you can even get the Banette-ite is if you enter the game in post-game with the upgraded Mega Ring at the time in which the Anistar dial is active. The description states a mysterious void. It is said that nothing can exist within it. And while the Spooky Plate never had a significant event to get it before Kalos, I still find it very strange that it is here. We likely won't get an answer on this one, but I couldn't ignore it, like I said. Mewtwo has always been one of the most significant Pokemon within the history of the franchise, so anytime it appears is enough to raise my attention to wherever it actually is and the story behind it. One such case is within Pokemon Village. This is a place within Kalos where Pokemon live in hiding from people due to numerous reasons. It's also visited by Wolfric, who befriended the Pokemon here. One reason they may be hiding from people is because of horrific pasts, such as what we find with Zoroark and how often it is treated as a Pokemon that people are afraid of and then attack. And this was before we knew of the deeper tragic past within history. But did you catch what I said? The place is not tended to by Wolfric as I once thought. It is merely visited by him. This means that the Pokemon here have ultimately created this village of their own according to protect each other. But there has to be one Pokemon, of course, that serves as the greater protector of them all. The Pokemon is found within the unknown dungeon in this area, otherwise named the Nameless Cave. A cave you can only access after entering the Hall of Fame and using Surf to access it. very similar to what we would see in the original games. It is here that a sole Mewtwo with either Mutanite X or Y resides. Why Mewtwo chose this place of all places is not truly known, but there's one easy bit of information that I think can potentially solve this case for us. Mewtwo is a Pokemon created by humanity that eventually learns that whether you are a cloned creature or naturally born, it doesn't matter. That no life is above another and life should not be justified or worked to be justified. Mewtwo would eventually grow to be a protector of the cloned Pokemon, taking them away from the rest of society and allowing them to thrive freely as their protector. This isn't to say that these Pokemon are cloned, but that with all the different parallels that we find of this area and the original Cerulean Cave, it seems pretty clear to me what's happening here. Mewtwo has found these Pokemon, and seeing them as Pokemon in need of safety, similar to the cloned ones, decided to make a home here and deter any possible threat that may appear. Makes you wonder how many other places are being protected by Mewtwo, since it can simply appear wherever it wants fairly quickly. I mean, Galarian Ponyta, another psychic Pokemon, can call for help to those outside of Galar, so then what are the limits of the most powerful psychic Pokemon of all, or at least what is claimed to be one of the most powerful psychic Pokemon of all time? Along the same lines as Mewtwo, we also have the legendary birds within Kalos, which are found within the Sea Spirit's Den, otherwise noted or translated to be Watatsumi's Den. Also being pronounced Wadatsumi, a legendary kami or god, Japanese dragon, and tutelary water deity in Japanese mythology. Owatatsumi no Kami, great deity of the sea, is believed to be another name for the sea deity Ryujin, dragon god, and also for the Watatsumi Sanjin, 3 Watatsumi gods, which rule the upper, middle, and lower seas respectively. They were created when Izanagi was washing himself of the dragon's blood when he returned from Yomi, the underworld. While this made me think of Wadatsumi in One Piece, this definitely goes deep, no pun intended, as Izanagi and Izanami erected a pillar with the power of their spears, the basis for the lore of Spear Pillar within Sinnoh. Yomi could be compared to Giratina's domain, as it was always connected to the underworld despite not having any actual dominion over it, but also still being a place where people go to when they pass away, at least within the manga with Archie and Maxie. It gets complicated. While only one of the legendary birds will appear in this den, dependent upon the starter you chose, and only after you beat the game and encounter it 11 times in the overworld. This, of course, then relates back to Lugia. After all, it is the Guardian of the Seas and is a rather titanically sized Pokemon. Yet Lugia does not appear in this den, nor does it appear in any other way, though it can be obtained through trading or through an event. If it wasn't clear that Lugia is meant to be here and represents Watatsumi, it learns Dragon Rush at level 15 within Generation 6, and through this event it already has Dragon Rush as one of its 4 moves. Now comes the mystery, because this is located within Azure Bay, known to be a place where Pokemon from other regions come to visit. And if one of the swimmers are telling the truth, they claim they swam here from Hoenn, which would tie back to the description of the den stating it is thought to have been from an ancient outpouring of energy that created this. There is only one energy that is described as ancient, and that would be primal energy of Kyogre and Groudon, or, primal energy in general. This could explain why AZ went to Hoenn, because it is, in fact, much closer than we usually imagine it to be. This isn't to say they're within walking distance for, a normal person, or swimming distance for a normal person, because, unless you're Jesus, you're not walking across water, but definitely closer than we typically think to have been, and were then affected by these super ancient Pokemon, though once again, this is something that will likely go unexplained unless we get more visitors from Hoenn directly into Lumios City, which that would be incredibly fitting considering all the Battle Tower people that are there. Since we're on the topic of Hoenn, there's one more special Pokemon we can discuss, and that is Deoxys. Considering AZ's connection to Hoenn and Mega Rayquaza, there's the possibility that Deoxys, don't know why I keep saying it that way, is also involved in the mix here, especially since Rayquaza absolutely despises it. It's not even entirely Deoxys' fault either. Sometimes it is a bit antagonistic, but other times it just wants to leave the planet anyway. The only reason Ray probably hates Deoxys is because it keeps arriving on meteors. Like, beep beep, sorry my house is on a collision course to your home, buddy, but please don't. Oh, you blew up my house, man. Now I'm angry. In all seriousness, though, there is one interesting speculation that comes from other theorists, but Desi Darks on YouTube was the first to catch my attention with their version of the theory. I won't say everything they talk about in their video because you should just go watch their video yourself and support them, but they claim that Meteor is the Pokemon that was transformed through the blast of the ultimate weapon into Deoxys. Simply put, Deoxys is formed from a virus that was mutated through the power of a laser beam, something that the ultimate weapon's attack can be described as. To help support this theory even further, I looked into things myself, and considering we have the power of Mega Evolution coming into existence from this beam, which typically raises base stat totals by 100, Meteor has a BST, base stat total, of 500, while Deoxys has a BST of 600. And it would be a really funny way to explain why Rayquaza not only eats meteors in space, but will also actively choose to consume Meteor. As one final piece to help support their theory, what does Meteor do once it cracks open? They dissipate, dying once they are exposed without their shell rather quickly. There are viruses and bacteria that are known to die when exposed to oxygen, which would then explain why Deoxys needs to stay within a meteor unless it mutates, or why it needs to return back to space. This would explain why it's in space, because there is no oxygen in space, and this would give us a full circle back into tying yet another Generation 3 Pokemon into the history of Kalos as a whole. I originally was not on board with this long ago, but after looking to the details, listening to their theory, and adding some extra facts into it, I am bought by this idea, and you genuinely should be as well. Now it's just a matter of finally seeing where these viruses originate from and where all of the Deoxys go once they mutate and return back to space. 2 weeks ago, I released an entire video about the deadfaller of Alola, a canonical thing that is caused by the mistake of Looker and Nanu many years before the main events of the game. This unnamed individual has yet to be fully revealed, and while I will save the details of who that deadfaller is and why they're significant, I will at least talk about the potential of there being a faller appearing within ZA here. Each faller, or even individual, we've had that has accidentally fallen through space and time has been a leader. This includes Annabelle and Ingo, who were battle leaders, and then Mon, who was a leading individual within the Aether Foundation. This has left a lot of speculation that there should be more fallers, and once they do appear, they would be individuals such as the Chatelaine Sisters of Kalos, or any of the other Battle Tower leaders, Frontier Brains, or otherwise. Even if they don't fall into Legends ZA, there is a massive chance with the ZA Battle Royale bringing in people from all over the world to test their skills that many, if not all, of the battle leaders will arrive. That's also to say nothing of other characters such as Elite Four members or champions. And in fact, I'm about 99% sure that Gito was ready to send Larry to represent Paldea into a new massive competition, which then foreshadows this event. I realize that since Paldea is the most recent in terms of the timeline so far, that ZA absolutely would then be the newest in the timeline and the most recent, which is nice to know if I do ever make that timeline video. My number one bet and personal theory as to who we'll see is Barry's father, Palmer. My reason for this is because he shares the same title as Annabelle, has a melodic, which has received a lot of attention lately, a Dragonite that has a new Mega Evolution, and he has a Regigigas on his team, which Regigigas is pretty significant, especially since we also did see it in Legends Arceus. Plus, his hair looks like a furfrou, sealing the deal for me at least, because that's goofy. I would genuinely find it to be extremely strange if we don't get any new fallers coming to Kalos, or being taken away from Kalos, especially with the Mega Dimension being right there. I guess that first part of all of this wasn't really much of a mystery, as it was a theory that has been circled by the community for a long time, and then me expanding on it and talking about parts that nobody else talks about, but oh well. Back to a shorter mystery or question, it's just the identity of AZ's brother. For the longest time, people thought that his brother was Ghetsis for some reason, and I hate to say this, but AZ's brother is stated to be dead, and it's too late to send flowers, I'm sorry. Within the files, though, of Lysandre's labs, we learn the majority of the information that we know regarding AZ's past outside of what he regales us with. But these papers also tell us about AZ's brother, how he had children, and that he buried that ultimate weapon so that way mortal hands could not use such a tool. The following is specifically what is stated. AZ had a younger brother. It's said that he led a legion of greedy souls who wanted to seize the Kalos region. His dark intention was to make it his own. But when he saw how Kalos had been ravaged by the war, he took the weapon his brother had created and he buried the weapon deep underground. The king's younger brother told his progeny the location of the ultimate weapon and died. That is something to be used by sophisticated powers, not by humans. Human beings must create a world where such a weapon is unnecessary. This is also how Lysandre got his hands on the ultimate weapon, because he is a descendant of AZ's brother. Though, I suppose we could question who the other descendants of AZ's brother are, which would lead us to question if they had children and if they continue to live within Kalos, which would be a really cool way to show why Vinny reminds us, or rather so many people, of Lysandre. Because they're not the same person, they're just simply related to one another, and that would be a fun red herring right there. Nevertheless, other than knowing he was a greedy man that was a major force behind the war, we don't know his name, what army he raised, nor the rest of his family and life events. This is another perfect opportunity to learn more about Kalos' history through AZ sharing personal stories of his life with us as we continue to work from his hotel. This next one sounds unnecessary at first, but stay with me as I want to know more about Diantha and Olympia, not just their pasts, but also their overall roles. After all, they both have the opportunity to play such greater roles within the games and seem to represent more than just the shown roles. On one hand, Diantha is arguably one of the least involved champions in the entire franchise. Blue was with us through the game, Steven Stone appears on occasion and studies rocks, Cynthia is one of, if not the greatest researcher of myths and archaeology within the world of Pokemon. Again, archaeology, not paleontology. Alder is involved with people and Pokemon closely. We skip Alola, but they're all pretty closely knit there. You could count Kukui if you want to. Galar has Leon, who is everywhere and has had a great influence, while Paldea has Gita, who personally checks in on us and the gym leaders during and after the main events of the game and within the DLC. Do you know what Diantha does? Lysandre has a one-sided conversation towards her, and then she leaves only to reappear as champion at the end of the game. Then Olympia is this individual with arguably the greatest psychic premonition power in all of Pokemon, and at least one of the most powerful human psychics in the world. She's basically the human version of a Gothitelle, and once again, I have an entire video talking about the scrapped content of Pokemon X, Y, and Z that goes over way more information than what I'm going to describe here. But if these two have as much scrapped content as I am made to believe, with Diantha being an ambassador of fairy Pokemon and Olympia serving to bridge the gap of humanity, space, and potentially even gods, then these two could have far more going on than we've been given. Now we're in the deeper mysteries. One last time, these are mysteries that I think are very interesting, are the most fun, or the most obscure. This first one is just super fun to me, and it may not even be all that deep to you. But here we are with the house on Route 14, its horror story, and the relation it may have to the Riches family. You are forced to hear this story as a player, and just outside of this house are 6 tombstones, and once you enter it, you and your allies are told a story by an old man, which goes as follows. It was a dark and stormy night many years ago. Lost, I arrived at this house and went inside. The lights would not turn on, so I fearfully looked around the house. Eventually, I made my way into the kitchen. There was no sign of anyone being there. I found the fridge, and when I opened it, a faint light leaked out. I could finally make out my surroundings, and I saw the faint outline of a man huddling in the corner of the room. I tried to tell him that I was lost, and I was hoping he'd let me stay until morning, but when I approached him, the man suddenly screamed, "Stay back!" I apologized and continued to plead my case. "Please, can't you help me? I'm not talking to you," he shouted. I looked at the man in surprise. When I did this, the man asked me, "Can't you see them? Behind you, a horde of faceless men. As a horror fan, I always love any level of the spookiness within my Pokemon games, especially when I get to talk about it during spooky month. But Route 14 here matches with Route 14 within Pokemon Black and White, a place where the Riches lived. Though they moved away, only one was left behind, making it so that there should have been only 5 graves here. We also know that the Riches moved from Unova to Kalos. We can support this because there is a maid on the ground floor of the unmarked office building who mentions the Riches family and references a Master Miles. Miles is supposed to be the one that we suspect to have stayed behind, but that may have changed later on in time. In addition, there are office buildings just down the street from Richisme Hotel, where there is someone actively searching for the Riches. The Richisme Hotel likely being owned by the Riches because, I mean, the name is right there, feels fairly obvious. But what if there was another possibility? What if this relates back to a different mystery revolving around the faceless yokai known as Nopetabo? I love visiting the information held by the people of yokai.com because they've always had some incredibly accurate information. I'm not sponsored by them, but if they ever hear any of my videos, if you're listening, I would love to talk. But from them, we have the following. Also called the Faceless Monk, Nopetabo resemble ordinary human beings in almost every way, and blend in perfectly with human society. However, the illusion is quickly shattered when met face to face. Nopetabo actually have no face at all. Their heads are blank orbs with no eyes, nose, mouth, or features of any kind. These mysterious yokai are encountered on quiet, empty roads late at night when nobody else is around. Like many yokai of this kind, their main activity seems to be scaring humans. This they do remarkably well. Nopetabo usually appear in the guise of a man or a woman with his or her back turned towards the observer. When approached, the yokai turns around and reveals its terrifying true form. To maximize the effect, they often appear with a face at first, then wipe their face off dramatically, with their hand at the most opportune time. Nopetabo revel in the terror they inflict upon their unsuspecting victims, and often work together in groups to scare one individual. As their victim runs away in a panic from the first Nopetabo, he runs into another person who asks him what's wrong. When the victim explains what he saw, this person replies, "Oh, you mean like this?" and wipes his face away exactly like the first Nopetabo. They are even known to impersonate close relatives of their victims, and sometimes a poor man will run all the way home, having run into multiple faceless monsters, only to tell his wife what he saw and have her too reply, "Oh, you mean like this?" The Nopetabo is a favorite transformation of mischievous animal yokai, kitsune, tanuki, and especially Magearna. In fact, so frequently are encounters with this spirit blamed on shapeshifting badgers that the Nopetabo are often mistakenly referred to as Magearna. And while there is no Zora on this route, there is one Pokemon that does love to shapeshift and take the form of other people in Pokemon, as many ghosts love to do, and that will be Haunter, which is found here. So even if it isn't a Haunter, we are right by Area City, which is just a fairy or fey wilderness, so there are a ton of different possibilities as how this Nopetabo could have came into existence, but I think we have solved our case here. Short and a bit sad, we have what happened to Looker's Pokemon. Specifically, we hear this from Emma. He said that when he looks at you, the player, it almost makes him feel like he has his lost Pokemon partner back again. He said there's something in your eyes. Somehow the same look. So he felt he could trust you. You're his partner now, aren't you? Don't let him go alone. Looker even notes himself, at one point while talking to us, that he no longer has a Pokemon on his team. And when we look at his desk, we can see a picture that we can interpret as being his signature Pokemon, his partner, Croagunk. The only Pokemon we've ever seen him have across all media. So somewhere between the events of Unova and Kalos, Looker lost his Croagunk. He's part of the international police, so there's always the chance he lost it outside of any of the events that we know. But to have such a loss revealed here, and to have Looker admit that he has become lonely to us before we accept being his partner, it's all very real. Very rarely does Pokemon touch on death, but as long as it isn't Ash dying for the 7th time, and it is a permanent death, they've done a pretty solid job of it. As I stated, it is short, but it's one of those bits of info that are very easy to gloss over while going through dialogue, and I think that it's important to keep in mind. The Area Zero Underdepths has a lot going on, and I won't be talking about how AZ may have fired the ultimate cannon and it landed here. I've already rolled that out through my Ancient World of Pokemon video. But what isn't rolled out are two strange details that need to be discussed here because they could relate to Kalos, or they could be a mere coincidence and hidden storytelling. In the Underdepths, we find a completely crystallized tree, and it is also in Area Zero's prairie that we only get white flower Floette. No other color Floette whatsoever. Of course, the second anyone sees Floette, the fans hold their heads and go, "Oh my gosh, it's an AZ reference!" And I don't blame you, because we need to keep our eyes out. But when we look at white flowers, they often represent purity, innocence, sympathy, and new beginnings, most often being used as part of a funeral. Eventually, once you discover the secret of the professors of Sada and Toro, you'll find out that they've been dead all along, and you've never spoken to them once. They've been dead for potentially even years, with their simulacrum robot taking their place and trying to end their mission of bringing past and future Pokemon to the present timeline. That mission, while thought to bring about a new age of Pokemon, would only serve to ruin the ecosystem of Paldea as these Paradox Pokemon take over the continent, unmatched by natural competition. It was supposed to create like an Eden of sort, or like a perfect paradise, which you could compare to a Garden of Eden once again, which could lead us back to the Azoth stuff, but whatever. Nevertheless, these white flower Floettes are your first sign that all has gone wrong, their own way to symbolize the death within this land. Meanwhile, with the crystallized tree, it is the only tree that is like this that I know of, and I so desperately wanted it to be related to Xerneas, or related to the Tree of Life, which are technically the same thing, but nope. In fact, it is most likely just another form of environmental storytelling, because there really aren't that many trees in Area Zero overall. It's kind of a savanna in a crater. With that in mind, the sheer amount of crystallization that happens is Scarlet and Violet's way of telling us that Terapagos is near and has been affecting the environment around it. Of course, we already knew that, but this tree serves to tell us that nothing is actually safe. All things can become crystallized, and we don't actually know how fast this happens. This sort of thing has also been shown through the Ruinous Quartet, as they change their environments around them as well. For example, Chiyu's location has a bunch of obsidian rocks in the cave because it is a lava goldfish. So again, not really much of a mystery. This is a strange little place where the seismic shifts took Terapagos, thanks to Regigigas, planted it like a crystal seed, and then a meteor crashed down upon it at some point, as the kind of topography, or the way that the whole shape of it is similar to that of the Chicxulub crater, that kickstarted the dino extinction. It just wasn't something I could ignore, as I know there were a lot of people with a lot of theories about it. Here's a personal theory of mine. AZ, being the genius that he is, and knowing how to control life energy through entrapment of Xerneas or Yveltal, or both, managed to create two Pokemon to then defeat Zygarde. The two Eternal Guardians are Golurk and Sigilyph, two Pokemon that are on his team, and at least one of them, being Golurk, is depicted as the only other member of his team in the manga. I understand the type differences, but many a time have we been shown that type differences don't always matter when it comes to a Pokemon fight. Now, there is zero question whatsoever that AZ disrupted the natural order of things. He created an ultimate weapon that used the powers of Xerneas and Yveltal, powers that control the flow of life. He took lives from many and made Floette eternal, and himself eternal as well by accident. This goes against the natural law of life and death itself already. And while Zygarde wasn't really there to stop Lysandre in the games, it is a major primary character within the manga and the anime. In other words, in order for AZ to have captured Xerneas and Yveltal, he would have had to fight Zygarde itself and defeat the absolute titan it can become with its 100% form, unless you subscribe to the strange theory that AZ created Zygarde, but that feels a bit stretched in my personal opinion. Nevertheless, if you're already making an ultimate weapon and harnessing the full extent of life energy, being able to create something that can fight against the protector of the balance of life itself is not that far-fetched, because this is just a contingency plan. If something stronger appears, I have to stop it. I have to capture these legendary Pokemon and their guardian that has been watching me. This would also help explain why Zygarde is known as the protector of the ecosystem and life balance before the main game events happen, because AZ had to encounter and fight against it at one point already. But how can you do so with no Pokemon? And why would he? He's so heartbroken about losing Floette. But that's the problem, because in his own words, he stated, "What's wrong with bringing something you love back into this world? Without my beloved Pokemon, no other Pokemon have any meaning." AZ became a monster, willing to sacrifice all lives for just one life that he loved. Beautiful and tragic. This then brings about why Sigilyph and Golurk are important. Sigilyph is a sentry Pokemon that is constantly patrolling. It fires upon anything that enters its territory. It can not only do this untiringly, but it can call a massive Golurk to it, as shown within Pokemon Snap, which is horrifying to witness firsthand. This serves twofold though, as a way to shoot Zygarde cells spying on you, and then when Zygarde transforms, Sigilyph can try to hold it off momentarily as the boss man Golurk flies in, or rather, Golurk turns itself into a cannon and fires massive blasts at Zygarde from a distance, since it can just do that, while other Golurk then fly in and fight firsthand. It's like a horde of zombies fighting against a titan. You see, both AZ and Golurk are very reminiscent of Hebrew legends, the Wandering Jew and the Hebrew Golem that protected the Jewish people, tying them even closer together. And what's most interesting is that in every fight Golurk is depicted in, it is absolutely bodying other Pokemon without any effort, but only when it goes up against legendaries, which it commonly does it finally get defeated. But imagine a horde of Golurk coming down onto Zygarde as AZ is doing everything he can to bring back his Floette, while his own Pokemon, created from the lives of other Pokemon, fight to protect him. It's an insane idea in theory, but I stand by it through and through. The Anistar Sundial is another massive theory that I have been strongly holding on to. I've mentioned it a lot recently, and it is a giant crystal that is suspected to be from space, whose pink color is very reminiscent of not only Diantha, but also Hoopa's magenta color and the way that Lumios Tower glows in one of the trailers. Also, Hoopa and this structure, the Anistar Dial, are both known as Oop Art, which are out-of-place objects, things that just do not make sense in history in the real world and have just kind of appeared. The actual Oop Art being Hoopa's lamp, or rather his prison bottle. Now, this sundial that I'm just gonna probably call the Sunistar Dial is able to upgrade our Mega Ring and allow us to find hidden Mega Stones whenever the dial is active, which is between 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. This insinuates that there is a resonance between these crystals and the Mega Stones. Furthermore, we can make the leap that this sundial could cause Mega Evolution to occur. This is because of the crystals appearing all over New Lumios that are now causing rogue Mega Evolutions to occur if we assume they are the same structure. You know, this would be excessively wild, but what if one of our legendary Pokemon just decided to absorb the entirety of the Sunistar Dial and Mega Evolve? Zygarde or Hoopa would be my bets for that, which is exceedingly absurd, but I'm down for it. Either way, this sundial is very important and could be effectively used in a number of different ways. It could even be reacting to the bonds created during Mega Evolution and slowly expanding. That slow expansion then causes it to appear all over New Lumios, but Quizartico doesn't see this as a problem, it's just another cash cow, because all you need to do is collect the shards and bring them to Quizartico so they can create Mega Stones for you, likely a sort of refining process using Pokemon life energy. After all, it is confirmed that Mega Evolution consumes a lot of life energy from both Pokemon and their trainers, so who knows where all this could really lead. Alright, I've teased it enough, but now we're going to discuss the absolutely wild situation that is the Parfum Palace. Well, yes, we've already discussed its real-life significance. Let's talk about the statues and other wildly important decor. Not only are there statues of Bisharp and Poniard, who went into battle 300 years ago here, but there is a statue of Melodic as mentioned, and then we get into the garden, and then it all goes wild. The palace garden, preceded by a bridge over a pond, contains statues of Reshiram and Zekrom, the legendary Pokemon from the Unova region. In addition, the garden is decorated with 4 hedge mazes, Pokeball statues added in at a later era, and a fountain. The King of Kalos is said to have prized his garden back in the day, even holding garden parties out there. 3 of the 4 hedge mazes are shaped to look like Solrock, a Chandelure, and a male Pyro respectively. Also, these gardens were likely tended to by a Florges. Oh, but wait, because there is still one detail often left out, because the palace was owned by the King of Kalos as stated, but this king does have a statue showing a knight, it seems, a Golurk, an Eevee, and a Palpitoad. If the knight is himself, we have a whole other slew of things going on. Now, AZ, of course, only had a Golurk of these 3, and the only other Pokemon he has ever had is a Torkoal, which also represents longevity in life, if we, you already remember that we had a Sigilyph. As for the rest of our common Pokemon, Solrock is representation of Meteor Falls and Hoenn, as that's when they were discovered, even if they were in the Great War, which, is weird. Chandelure was hung up in homes, but this would cause people to lose their lives. It's a chandelier, it goes in fancy places, it steals lives. What are you going to do about it? Pyroar is representation of kingship. Palpitoad can technically make weak earthquakes, but it's hard to understand why it's here on the surface, though it could be because in Japan, they, toads, symbolize fertility and good fortune, both being what a king wants. You want to, continue the family line, and you want to make sure everyone's rich in your family. Finally, there's Eevee, a rare Pokemon by all means, even in the modern day, which is just another symbol of wealth and attainment. While many people have thought this could be AZ, this king, I would argue that it is not, because this is all too gaudy, too showy, too greedy, and doesn't match up with our timeline. AZ's brother passed, but that isn't to say that his children didn't inherit kingship from him. And while Lysandre seems to do away with being a king or royalty at all, maybe one of his ancestors were just as greedy as AZ's brother. And let's be real, this is all an immense amount of wealth, while also still having Golurk here, which is always significant and ties back to AZ. And I mean, when we look at Reshiram and Zekrom being here, we can tie in that they are within Dragon Spiral Tower in Unova, the Golurk themselves, likely as a traded gift in good honor between 2 regions that are friendly with each other. Liberty Garden is also within Unova, with the Statue of Liberty being a gift from France in the real world, which of course throws our dear Victini into the mix now. Do you see why this place is amazing? And I had to save it to now, but it also gives me a massive headache. I can feel it right there. It might be lack of sleep and caffeine. Whatever happened between Kalos and Unova, though, is unknown, but it is evident that something major happened 3,000 years ago, and potentially even 3,000 years ago as well, because this is far too much to ignore. And to close the deal on this, AZ may be depicted in paintings within Parfum Palace. When one of the paintings is examined after defeating AZ at the end of the story, the player notes that it reminds them of him. Which, it may not actually be AZ, as people do believe, it's just AZ's family. A younger AZ is also depicted in a mural displayed in Lumios Museum, though this painting was created after we became champion, so it doesn't hold anything other than artistic value, and actually it gets some information wrong based on what we understand. This place, though, has some of the most interesting historic details, Parfum Palace, and it's being managed by a buffoon of an individual who doesn't realize the full significance of what they have. If this didn't seal the deal for you on the Kalos Unova AZ connection, then I don't know what will, because all the bare bones are here, we just need a necromancer to bring all of this stuff to life. Our semi-finale is one that bases itself on the known scrapped game of Pokemon Z and what happens within the Pokemon Adventures manga, the Battle of Zygarde and the Ultra Beasts. The Ultra Beasts are effectively invasive species that do not belong in our universe, let alone within Alola, our planet, whatever, for their safety and our own. They can be volatile, confused, and incredibly destructive in their own right as they try to return home. And when we look at the scrapped information of Pokemon Z, Zygarde was intended to partner with us to help us fight a beast hiding away at End Cave, a place where we know in the main games both Zygarde and Guzzlord resided in separate versions. Zygarde deemed this beast a threat, and that it had to be eliminated or else it could destroy the world in its entirety. Which is absolutely correct if it is Guzzlord, who can literally eat rivers and just get larger without pooping. But not only this, but Zygarde, as stated earlier, does go full 100% form to fight against Ultra Necrozma within the Adventures manga, which is wild to imagine two Titanous gods duking it out like this. As a side though, I gotta say, I have covered the red and yellow arcs spanning 7 whole volumes on this channel in 2 videos. And if you want to see more and hear the whole story in a really fun way, go watch those videos, go listen to them. Full story, breakdown, and it's just honestly the best way to enjoy Pokemon, hands down in my personal opinion. That aside though, and back on track, this leaves a lot of room as to what could happen within, or to guys, Zygarde, and what is being called the Mega Dimension. Our dimension could be the Mega Dimension, and then traveling between other Mega Dimensions or other dimensions as a whole. And it is through traveling through time and space that we could be inviting otherworldly creatures like the Ultra Beasts, allowing us to finally see Zygarde's reaction to them, and maybe even fight Ultra Necrozma within the games. Here's our finale, Jirachi's Wishes. I have held on to my Jirachi theory for so long, and now it is only expanded. In short, every 1,000 years a comet appears, the Millennium Comet. And when we look throughout history, every 1,000 years a major meteoric event also happens that threatens life in some parts of the world or the world as a whole. This also usually coincides with the advent of Kyogre and Groudon going ham on each other, and Rayquaza coming in to save the day like the parent it is, or all 3 of them working together against a meteor as shown within the manga. These events line up far too well with each other to be a coincidence, especially when we consider the Pokemon Generations episode, The Wish, an episode that mimics that Oris game and story of Zinnia and her people, of how they called out to the sky, wished to the heavens for their savior Rayquaza, and it did appear in full mega form to save them and the world. The same event that AZ witnessed, as this heavenly serpent would save everyone from an untimely demise. And so, while I talk about it more in other videos, it is here that the theory of Jirachi granting Rayquaza Mega Evolution started for me. Then we start to dig into the parallels of our Aura Trio, with Zygarde being similar to this super ancient trio with Rayquaza. Same colors, same relationships within their groups, and similar major events tying them together. And of course, AZ witnessing both while calling Rayquaza the one that will bring peace. With all of this in mind, in addition to many people, both good and bad, saying they will reach the top of the AZ Royale and get what they want, their wish, it has a lot of heads turning towards adorable little Jirachi. And are they being literal? Are wishes actually the final prize when you reach the top of the tower? Or is that just a red herring? Even if it is, the parallels and ties between Kalos and Hoenn have always been so heavily established at this point that it's hard to imagine that something major isn't on its way. In fact, don't be surprised if we get a surprise meeting of both Rayquaza and Zygarde, the Guardian from the atmosphere and the Guardian of the Earth. And when the heavens and earth combine, they will unify into a renewed world of divine presence for all eternity. Something that matches perfectly with what AZ stated: peace, prosperity, and wishes. That's a very religious thought, but Pokemon loves to sneak in religious iconography and ideas into their stuff all the time. What this would mean for the world of Pokemon is a great question, and it may open the doors to far more things, and I'm excited for it. In conclusion, there are tons of mysteries that exist thanks to Kalos, and I really hope that ZA brings all of this lore together. Please do join me on my journey through the game, as I will be playing it on day 1 of release live on this channel. We'll see what videos come from it. I know I have a complete ecology video to make from it, break down the megas, find lore, rework the lore as we know it with new information, and it'll all be so much fun. So I'm excited, and I hope you are too. But thank you for watching. please do make sure you do subscribe. Leave a comment with what your hopes are in this new game, as I love to read comments, and both comments and watch time are the #1 free way to boost a video on YouTube, and even hype the video while you're at it, because that's a new function. But how about we go thank the members of the channel, and if you want to hear your name at the end of every video and get some nice little extra perks, become a member of the channel for as little as $3 a month on here or Patreon, and it helps increase the quality of these videos. Thank you to all of our members of the channel, starting with the Gods of Hope, Krill Fat Fantasy 14, Heals for Live, Biggins, Vatty, Knit, and Buzz in Summer, then the champions, Andrew, Merchant, Kosa, Joshua, Biggins, Wilson, then the Knights of the Court, Vatty, Lemon, Kelsey, Hoover Covers, Luke, Sassy, Crumbo, VO, Moth Romance, Double, Shiny Gem, Sarah, Bruce Voice, Fix My Nitrogen, Final Fantasy 14, Wow, Alan, Heals for Life, Blue Dalek, Warren Hemphill, Zoomster, then all the Wanderers, Mr. Hellhound Yips, Super Saiyan Son Goku, Emil Wickstrom, I Wish I Was Drunk, Vody Reaper, JC Hero, Ocean Man 7, Vorians Guys, Inver Fossils, Ryan Schwenk, Shoot Past the Limit, Chidori Phoenix 1, Vanessa Motoru, Yagal Cow, Snake Sound 520s, Kaio Tsutsuki, Cool Breeze, Eric, Max Supreme, Shadowhawk 19, Lost Mysteria, Desporty Emperor, Softy and Kai, to Markle, Zakai, Inferno, Twitch, Lydia Marie, Elder, Dennis Garcia, Lion Clan, Nathan Palmer, Sophie Favark, The High Chi, Kristen Cap, Cliff, Lumika, Daniela 808, Roger McLean, Supporty Boy, Kamutak 123, Star S, Pyro Master, Jay Gill, Abdallah Aladi, Gaming Grooves, Night Owl 707, Evil Chan, Ruby, Micah 626 Gaming, Nicole Manassian, Kristen Sandwich Boss, Emmy, whatever this is, Michael Simon, Lolan Figman, Manico, TH73, Sydney House, Miss Zorua, Dakota Couch, Brad Sundimer, Drixel, Carl Jean, Hunter Alex, Saint Kasam, Rebecca Connell, Hune, Jappy W, Memento, Mona Marshy, Edward Kasowski, yeah, that's how you say it. Oh my goodness. Fedeka, Fox, Nerder, Screamberg, Hag, Adicadabra, King Pie, Jack of Frost, Rushes, Snivy, ADC, Jacob Square, TJ Monk 23, Squidwater, Rice Smith, Gamer, Bad Dragonite, Just J, M, Empty Horse Water Cocktail, Muse, Art World, Tolumio, Gwendolyn, Eastgander, 017, Andrew Frost, Peak, Anonymous, Summon, Sloth, Knock, Newing, Ian Ray, Big and C Night, Corn Cop, A Sleepy Bear, Jericho. What's up? Wait, how did Summon Sloth get there twice? Unseelie, King, the Vorian Skies, Daniel Tracy, Garrett Hoffman, Dylan Peters, Malachi Burkhart, Heather Wiseman, Electric Solar, BSL Bay, Jalon Dean, Keep Moving Forward, and The Licks. Thank you all for supporting the channel. If you want to hear your name at the end of the credits, please do become a member for as little as $3 a month. Without you, I wouldn't be able to afford things like a teleprompter or other things that could improve the quality of this channel overall. Also, it's really funny because I read too fast, so the teleprompter would not pick up on me saying this whatsoever, so I still have to do this the old-fashioned way and scroll it myself. But otherwise, thank you as always so much for watching. Don't do anything I want to do. Don't think I want to do. Please be nice to each other. I love you. I'll see you next time. Bye!